All right, we're here at my outdoor worm bin, and this is going to be an exciting video because the last time we were in here, we put a bait cup in the center here with lots of food inside of it, and we are going to see how many worms we got in here. But we are also going to talk about how I get my outdoor worm bin ready for summer, and we're going to add some really cool foods in here. So let me just kind of pull this down, and we are going to check that bait cup out. All right, so I have a little confession to make. It has been 71 days since we were in here last because I had my shoulder surgery, and I have actually been feeding this bait cup over and over again because I kept thinking I'm going to get to the video and I would just stuff more, and I'm putting my hand underneath because I don't know if it's going to have a bottom. So let's lift it out and see what we've got going. Right there, we've got a lot of worms down underneath as expected, but let's turn it over and see if they ate through it. It doesn't look like they did, so what they probably did was use the holes on the side, and I think I'm just going to dump it right out. Now, in that 71 days, I would expect that there's not going to be any leftovers that we had put down there, and that all the nourishment they got from food was through this cup. And let's check it out. There we go inside, and sure enough, all kinds of worms. In fact, big mass right here in the center that I can feel. And they made lots of castings with all the food scraps I had put in here. And we put some strawberries and bananas in there. And later I put lettuce and all kinds of other stuff. And check it out. Lots of great worms in there. Now, this is nowhere near the 4,000 to 5,000 I estimate I have in here. And that's probably because they are all around the bin as well, because they also eat bedding. It's really important that you feed bedding and food scraps to your worms every time you feed. So let's go ahead and dig inside. And I think, you know what I'm going to do with this? I'm going to use this again in my storage containers. So I'm just going to set this to the side and I will throw it in the storage container with some more food to get any worms that might have hitchhiked over into some of my castings, or any worms from cocoons turned into worms. So let me just kind of get some of these guys out and then I will set it to the side. Pretty cool, huh? Mm-hmm. So it looks like we have definitely proven that you can use those for bait cups and just continue to put food in them. If you're not really ready to get your worms out, just keep putting food in them, because I did that for 71 days. Now, you may want to be asking, just like the executive producer just asked me, why do I have all this dry bedding in here? And that is because about a week ago, I harvested this bin, and anything that was kind of overs that didn't make it through the sifter, I put right on top and it kind of dried out. But if you look at this over the 71 days that this was in here, lots of worm castings and great moisture. I can kind of squeeze it together and it stays in a clump, but it also breaks apart. So if I were to sift this whole bin, I could get tons of worm castings, but I'm going to keep this bin going and we are going to add more food to it. But first, let me kind of dig around and just kind of get a look at the population. And every time I drag my hand through, we are seeing lots of worms and cranberries. Oh my gosh, these things have been in here since October, and it right now is April of the following year. So cranberries just last forever. And I've been trying to squeeze them and just kind of help them go, but wow. Unbelievable. All right, let's keep digging over this way, and I'm loving what I'm seeing. I'm lots of great worm castings, and I'm going to harvest this next time we check in here, so nothing right now. And then we've got some big stuff. This is a pumpkin stem, so it has also been in here since October or early November. There we go. All right, perfect. Let's go ahead and, oh wow, that is really dry. That is a mango seed. Even still, dry like that, some worms in there with some castings. So excellent. And you know, last time we were in here, when we put that cup in here, first thing we did was kind of line it with some of the baby carrots that I had from my garden. And then, like I said, that cup was stuffed with strawberries. We even put an apple core in there and then a banana, and kind of made a banana split in it. But I also added a bunch of food scraps all around it to include celery stalks, cucumbers, some more apple cores, banana peels, and more strawberries. Plus, we added our amendments as usual, and then a lot of cardboard, which you kind of saw. Now, as we set up for this feeding, let's kind of talk about what you want to do with your outdoor worm bin as you're kind of getting ready for summer. And as I add a lot more cardboard shreds, because I want to make sure that we bulk this thing up again, the first thing you may notice with your outdoor bin as you're approaching from winter going into spring and summer is that the worms are going to be more active. So you really want to give a lot lot more bedding and a lot more food scraps to them. The bedding is going to help to aerate things out because it is going to get warmer in your worm bins, which you also want to make sure that your worm bin is in the shade. You might have moved it during the winter, but make sure when you put it back wherever it's going to go that you've got some good shade for it. Now, the other thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to check on your worm bin more often in the summer than you did in the winter, and that is because in the spring all the critters are getting more active, to include worms, but also raccoons, mice, any other little critters, even ants, and I did a video on that a little while back, are just going to be more active in getting into your worm bin. So you kind of want to have a proof of human life around your worm bin. Just go in there and check on it every once in a while, and the animals are going to be able to smell that that is not a place that they want to hide or get into much when they know there's a lot of human activity around. So I know many of you have watched my how to set up a vermi hut worm tower video, and in that video we set up my neighbor Jeff's vermi hut, and Jeff is awesome. He always gets me into crazy things, and the latest thing he's gotten me into is cooking my own sourdough. So this right here is sourdough starter discard, and here is some sourdough bread that I actually made. So I want to put the discard over here, and I'm going to put the sourdough bread, and it's hard as a rock. We just didn't get to all of it. I made so many loaves, and my family did a good job, but we just couldn't get to this one. I think I'll actually do it like that up so the moisture can kind of soak into it. So we'll see how these do in the worm bin. My prediction is that this will go faster because even though it's frozen, it is going to melt and just kind of sink down into everything. But we'll see how these do. Typically, I see bread take a little bit longer, especially if it doesn't get too moist and it kind of retains that dryness. But we're going to add a ton of food scraps. And here's that ton. Oh my gosh, I don't even remember all these food scraps because, like I said, I have not been doing really good with my worm bins just because of my shoulder surgery and not being able to get in here and be real active with them. So I've just kind of given them minimal feedings. But we have a ton of stuff. Lots of banana peels. We even have a little bit of onion. We've got some peppers, apple cores, tomatoes, strawberries, lots of good food scraps. Looks like we've got a potato. This has been frozen, so it should not grow back. And this is a whole banana, so I'm just going to kind of break it open, and I want to get the bulk of it right there on top of that bread. So next I'm going to go in with some amendments, and this is all the worm chow I have. I definitely need to make more, and I use my Magic Bullet blender to just put some pantry dry items like flour or cornstarch, crackers, old cereal, etc. You just put it in there and blend it up and then feed it to your worms. Next we'll go in with some coffee, and this is spent coffee grounds, and I'm just going to kind of dig in a little bit to try and get more of it for them because I seem to be drinking more coffee than I'm feeding the worms, and like I said, have not been good with feeding the worms since my surgery. So there we go, a lot more coffee for them. And then finally in goes our eggshell grit. This is what they use to kind of break up the food after they eat it because they have gizzards, and it just helps them to make the food particles smaller. So this is an enormous feeding. One, because I'm feeling sorry for my worms because they just haven't been fed a whole lot lately, but two, because summer is coming up and I know they are a lot more active than they were just about a month ago. And three, because I have somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 worms. So if you just gotta have 1,000 worms and it's your second week of having a worm bin, this is not what you should be feeding your worms. You should be feeding probably this much food right here, and maybe even adding in a little piece of broccoli or perhaps some lettuce. That right there is a feeding for 1,000 worms if you're feeding them weekly. This is a feeding for 4,000 to 5,000 worms if you're feeding them once every 2 weeks. So we're going to go in with a whole bunch more bedding, and it's very important that every time you feed, you add more bedding. So we're going to keep going with that, and I'm just going to keep piling it in here because this worm bin is made out of two 20-gallon fabric pots, one inside the other, and it is usually only filled about 1/3 to half the way up. And right now, it's more closer to that 1/3 mark. So I am trying to bulk it up. You're going to see me feeding a lot more and adding a lot more bedding. Now this is dry, right? In some of my other bins, I'll add dry bedding and not add any moisture. But for this one, I do. Right after this video, I'm going to take it outside, put it back in its place, and I'm going to add some rainwater right over the top of it to really soak it through. If you have a worm bin like this, one of the things that you commenters taught me was put it over your garden and then water it in and then put it in its place. So that's what I'm going to do with this. So I hope this video got you energized for the summer season of your worm bin. And if you want to check out that video where the ants were attacking my bin, I'll put a link to it right here. I gotta tell you, it is so good to be back. So I hope you're all having a great day. I hope your worm bins are doing fantastic. So happy vermicompost, everybody. Take care now.